Hello, folks. Ah, yeah. So again, hello folks, welcome to Wasteland. We're going back to where this channel started. The very first Let's Play that I posted on this channel, back when Bad Idea Gaming still existed, was a playthrough of the NXile re-release of Wasteland. And here we are with the Krome Remaster. This is my favorite game of all time. I first played it back in 1988 or 1989. I think it would have been Christmas of '88 that I got it, and I have loved it ever since. I was a wee lad when I played it, and it kind of blew my mind, both with how unforgiving it was and with how good it was. And as I've gotten older, I've only grown more impressed with just how much story they were able to pack in to 4 5.25-inch floppy disks on the Commodore 64. This version of the game is considerably bigger because it's been remade in Unity from the ground up, but the original DOS version, that was what I played for a good number of years, came on a single 3.5-inch floppy, which means the entire game, not counting paragraphs, but the game itself fit in under 1.44 megabytes. They packed this game to the gills. Like I said, I've played this for over 30 years. I have played it literally hundreds of times, and I still occasionally find things that I wasn't familiar with. That hasn't happened in a while because ever since the beta, I've dug in so deep. I think I've found all the secrets and hidden things, but you never know. You can always find something. So this is the Krome Remaster. I think they did a fantastic job. It's not perfect, nothing is, but I've been very impressed with what they did with this game. We will be playing through it. It's been a couple years since I played Wasteland. I usually play it every year, at least once, so this will be kind of going back. So we'll be running on through it and pointing out things and so forth and so on. And I just need to be very careful with what I do because the macro recording key bindings are very similar to the key bindings I have on OBS for recording. So I'll need to keep that in mind. We'll go over that in a minute. So we're going to start a new game.
The following is an excerpt from the history of the Rangers, the early years.
This part is a direct copy and read from the original game manual.
Hardbound page 293, $20 gold. Tensions grew with the coming of 1998. The United States Citadel Star Station was slated to be fully operational by March. Soviet charges that the space station was merely a military launching platform alarmed a number of non-aligned nations. 2 weeks before Citadel was due for full operation, the station transmitted a distress signal. Immediately after the message was sent, most of the satellites orbiting the planet were swept clean from the sky, leaving the great powers blind. In military panic, each sent their nuclear arsenals skyward. On that day, a company of U.S. Army engineers were in the southwestern deserts, building transportation bridges over dry riverbeds near a newly constructed federal prison for criminals condemned to death. The engineers took over the prison and expelled the inmates into the desolate desert to complete their sentences. The company soon realized that communities beyond the desert's grip had also survived, and felt compelled to help these other survivors rebuild and live in peace. Toward this end, the Desert Rangers, in the great tradition of the Texas and Arizona Rangers a century before, were born. The prison, which came to be known as Ranger Center, grew to be one of the strongest outposts in the Wasteland. The Desert Ranger badge of authority, the Ranger Star, is one you wear. New orders await, and with them, your adventure in the Wasteland begins.
There we go.
After several strategy meetings with the leader of the Desert Rangers, General Sergru, you've been assigned to investigate a series of disturbances in the desert. You've been ordered to search for clues in High Pool, the Agricultural Center, and the Rail Nomads Camp, all of which are located to the west of Ranger Center.
Okay, so, like I said, that text crawl, that was the original introduction from the manual. That's word for word as far as I remember. That's also the source of one of the complaints some of us had with Wasteland 2 switching to a scrap-based economy was we've already established that there's a gold-backed currency. There's gold dollars, and at the end of the game, there's a history book that talks about what happened during the events of the game, and that, again, lets you know that there's an actual currency. So switching to scrap seemed weird, but we'll set that aside. Okay, so I mentioned the macro, and that's what's going on over there. That's an indication that it's recording a macro. That's just whatever. The little animation thing talking about General Sergru. The general's name, I believe, didn't exist until Wasteland 2, but the bit about exploring to the west, as I recall, that was either at the beginning of the manual or in the hints, but that was basically the only direction the game gave you was High Pool, Nomads, Egg Center, check them out, see what's going on, and you go from there. This is not a game that holds your hand. So, all that aside, let's look at our party. This is the pre-built party. This was a thing that was very common in the 80s. Bard's Tale had it too. It was the A-Team. And you've got a pre-built party so that if you want to just play the game, you can. You'll see that in Wasteland 2 and 3. They've got pre-built characters you can use. This was very common. The old Might and Magics had pre-built parties and so on and so forth. Generally what you want to do, though, is you want to consolidate the equipment, delete them, replace them with new people, you also want to give their equipment, the crowbars, the pistols, the ammo, you want to give that to the new party to give them a leg up on money and equipment and so forth and so on. Because this is not a good party. You should recognize the names from Wasteland 2 and a couple of them from Wasteland 3. But let's take a look at what we've got here. So you've got Hellraiser. This image is very much just a new version of the old Ranger cameo, is what they called it. In the original game, every Ranger looked like that. They only had the one cameo. Anyway, Hellraiser has a 14 intelligence, which, not great, but not bad. Low speed, which makes him equipping that crowbar even more inexplicable, because it'll take him forever before he uses it. 15 dexterity, that's good. We want dexterity and intelligence, generally, when you're building a character. So let's go ahead and equip that pistol. Everyone starts with similar gear. It's either the 45 or the 9mm, and then they all have a rope, canteen, crowbar, knife, hand mirror match. Match has a use in 2 places in the game, and you'd never know it just normally playing the game. Hand mirror is useless. Crowbar does sort of have a use. Canteen is critical. You will die without a canteen, and rope is obviously always useful. Taking a look at his skills, 2 in brawling. They're building him to be melee. Climb is a skill you want everybody to have. Clip pistol, obviously, that's going to control the 45. You want him to have that. Swim and perception are both very good skills to have. You pretty much want everyone to have them. SMG is submachine gun. That one's optional. I used to use them a lot when I was younger, until I upgraded past them. As I've gotten older, I usually skip the submachine gun and just go straight to rifles. But that is a personal choice. Silent move is useful in 1 place, I think, in the game. Maybe 2. It's not bad to have, though. Acrobat is useful in a couple places. It's kind of hidden where it gets used. Knife throw is mostly useless. Angela Death. Now, this is the female American icon, I think. Although it's entirely possible that... no, I think this is unique to Angela. High intelligence, high dexterity. Yeah, Angela's stats actually aren't that bad. Same. Clip pistol, swim, perception. Demolitions has a couple uses. Confidence has a couple optional uses. Assault rifle won't be needed until much later. Alarm disarm does have a couple uses, but for the most part it's pointless. Picklock, safe crack. Both useful. Picklock more than safe crack. And medic. Medic is invaluable. Thrasher. He's a strongman. 17 strength, 9 dexterity. He's going to, and 10 intelligence. He's going to take a lot of work to get usable. He is the weakest in terms of quality. He's the least good. And I'm probably going to leave him with the knife for now, although he only has 1 knife fight. So let's switch to a crowbar. The crowbar will use agility, speed to determine when he goes. Although all firearm initiative is simultaneous. After all the guns are fired, then the melee attacks occur, and that is determined by speed. Agility will determine his to hit, and strength will be part of his damage. Brawling, level 2 brawling just means, I believe that he'll get 2 attacks. Whereas using a knife does use the knife fight skill to determine if you're going to hit. It's much more limited. Swim, perception, anti-tank weapon, and gamble. Snake, this might be the default male Mexican. I'm not positive. This might also be a custom for Snake. Low strength, really high intelligence. Too bad he loses it all by Wasteland 2. Very low agility, good dexterity. As you've probably figured, the stats are a 3d6. So you get between 3 and 18. And then, normal gear. Bomb disarm has a couple uses. Swim, perception, rifle is useful. Bureaucracy is not that useful. There's a couple places you can use it, but you can use other things that work just as well, if not better. Level 2 medic, which is very good, and metallurgy, which has, I believe, one use, completely optional, and by and large not worth it. But we'll take a look at it later. Now, the manual says you should have at least one character with medic, but the manual lies. You want all 4 characters to have medic. Because if your medic gets seriously wounded, who's going to heal them? So, over here, we're just going to touch on this really quick. This is, almost all of this is just straight from the manual. Description of the party, description of attributes, so if you're ever confused, especially the difference between agility and dexterity, there you go. Dexterity is picking locks and aiming weapons. Agility is dodging blows and melee attacks, hand-to-hand combat. A little bit about allies, what the various commands do, encounter, order, etc., etc. The options in combat, run, use, hire, etc. Time. This is a description of a few of the areas. Only a few of them. Vegas, Needles, Quartz. Buried here in Vegas, we've got what was probably a partial inspiration in New Vegas. Most folks figured it was because the house was betting against a missile landing and no one beats the house. Acknowledgements. This is the original thank you section. List of items. And how to use them. What the things do. And weapon list, which is just conventional weapons. The 2 rifles, the 2 assault rifles. There's the other rifle. Rockets, submachine guns, so on and so forth. And down here, we've got the skills, which includes the skill list up to IQ 17. There are skills beyond metallurgy, but you have to discover them in-game. Here is where medic is, at IQ 15. So generally when you're making a party, you want everyone to have an IQ of at least 15, and you want to spend the 2 skill points to get medic. Now the one thing I missed was not in the original manual. This is in the game. The DOS version had macros. None of the other versions of the game had macros, and I don't believe they were listed in the manual. They were probably on a quick card or just somewhere else. But the manuals in this are the macros, in this are a little clunky because they have to be the function keys, but they can't just straight be the function keys because F1 pulls up this menu. And the reason F1 pulls up that menu is because escape advances the clock. And as you can see, the clock advances by 4 minutes for every key press. Inside places at the first level, it will be 2 presses for every minute, and if you go far enough inside a location, it will become 4 presses for every minute. So you've got a graduated clock. So move around, and we'll go to high pool. So if you watch the clock, 1, 2, and a minute goes by. So you've got different time lapsing. Down here on the bottom, you've got all your commands. Most of these are exactly as they are in the original game. A couple, like disband, has been changed because WASD has been mapped for movement. In the original game, it was either mouse or arrow keys. But since they added WASD, we had to tweak a couple of them. But use is just to use an item, skill, or attribute. Encounter is to force a fight. Order is to rearrange the order of the characters. Disband is to split the party or to get rid of an NPC. View is if you've got a split party and you want to switch between them. So let's disband Hellraiser. And as you can see, we now have 2 people. And Hellraiser is kind of the guy, and we use view to switch over. And we can see that the token has changed. That's because Angela's in the front. And then we just move them back together. F1 pulls up the pause menu. Radio for promotions, just like in Wasteland 2. Camp is a new addition, and that is kind of taking the place of the old time passes macro that everybody used. So 7:22, you hit camp. 8:12. So it's not quite an hour. It's probably about 100 presses of the escape key. So if you camp here, you get a little under an hour. If you camp on the overworld, you get more than an hour. That sort of thing. And then F2 pulls up the journal, which is also newly added. You didn't get this kind of stuff back in the 80s. Are you kidding? You had to keep track of everything yourself. So here we have our missions. These will add more information as you progress the mission, and it will also give you hints if you're stuck. If you get to the end game and you haven't found a couple key items, there will be hints directing you, possibly, where to go to get what you need. Stored passwords, you'll find passwords in the game, and it'll store them here so you don't have to write them down. This is a complete list of all the paragraphs in the game, fake ones and real ones, and they're all voice acted. I believe they're voice acted by the guy that did it for the re-release.
The following is an excerpt from the history of the Rangers,
the guy that
the
does
early years, by Carl Albert,
Snake Vargas.
2087.
You creep up to the window, and in the soft, muted lights, you see a tall woman with blonde hair. She sits before a mirror and brushes her hair, and then stands and walks over to the sunken tub off to her left. She kneels, and her blue silken robe drops to the floor. She turns the water on, and steam slowly fills the air. You watch in fascination as she reaches down into the tub, whirls, and points an Uzi in your direction. Stop reading paragraphs you're not supposed to read, creeps. She sighs deeply. Next time I'm going to demand they put me in a Bard's Tale game. This wasteland duty is dangerous.
So yes, when you were a kid and you first got Wasteland and you saw that you weren't supposed to read paragraphs, try not to read an entry until you're instructed to, and you said, screw that. That was the first one you saw. Encounters is a bestiary. So as we fight people, they will appear here. Some things that you fight, you'll get all the information the first time. Other things, you'll have to beat them multiple times to get all the information about them. You know, if there's only one in the game, you only need to fight it once. And then stats is just your stats, broken down to locations and global. So there we go. The other nice thing about this version is you get multiple save slots. Looks like 15 is what you get. As opposed to the original where you had 1. And it auto-saved every time you entered an area. So you could very easily get yourself in serious trouble. But as you saw, I've used all of these. I've got some... Those are complete. That's a complete game. Wow, it's been a while since I played. It's been about a year. And there are also quick saves, which is, handy. But I think that will more than suffice for an introduction to this game. Next week, we'll actually start playing for real, and we will explore Highpool. So, until next time, folks, don't forget your canteen, and have a good one.